If you're a driven, active person who wants to reach and pursue a higher quality life with some ambition, then guess what? This podcast is for you. This is the Driven Athlete Podcast. What's up, y'all? It's your man, Dr. Kyle. Welcome back to the Driven Athlete Podcast. We got Nicole Erickson, the legend, back again with us, working with high-level athletes, a lot of tennis, right?
Yeah.
Down at FM Tennis Center. Mm-hmm. She's a mental performance coach.
Yeah.
Tell us more about where you're at and the type of clientele you work with.
Yeah. So I actually have two locations. One is down in Boynton at FM Tennis. It's a performance center, mostly for tennis players. Other athletes go there, but I predominantly see tennis players and a few other sports down there. And then I also work up in Jupiter at a Rise Center for Athletic Development. And I see a lot of golfers and baseball players there. And then again, a few other sports. So
cool.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick between the two of those,
you're putting me on the spot.
Yeah. Baseball, tennis, golf.
Yeah.
Field sports, team sports.
Yeah. Oh,
because I know you played basketball back in the day, right?
I did.
High school.
I did. I have a lot of fun working with basketball players. I do. I have a lot of fun doing that. That's hard.
It's just hard to pick.
It's hard to choose. Yeah. It's hard to choose. I don't know, maybe golf or tennis. I'll just go with that, even though basketball is a lot of fun. Yeah.
Cool. So remind everybody originally what got you into the sports, mental performance field.
Yeah, for sure.
Interested you in that.
Mm-hmm. So I grew up playing basketball. I struggled a lot with my confidence, not due to lack of dedication. I was actually that one athlete that would train constantly outside of practice, go hard in practice.
Basketball was life.
Basketball was life. Ball, yes,
that's it.
Yes, and made a lot of social sacrifices, all the things that you're supposed to do, and then come to game time, still lacked confidence. Couldn't figure out why, because everyone's telling me, oh, more you practice, more confident you'll be. But really for me, it was not having the tools on the mental side. That's why I lacked the confidence. I would show up game day and I didn't know how much I'd be beating myself up that day. I didn't know what emotions were going to come up, and if they did, how I was going to manage them. So there was a lot of fear going into games because of that. I didn't have any skills or tools to help me through. And as we're taught, you can't freak out on the court. You have to be confident, like all that stuff. And it's like, okay, great. Well, how do I do that? So lacked confidence because of that. Tore 2 ACLs in high school. So wasn't able to go on and play college. Chose not to. Second one was going in my senior year. Thought I was going to do physical therapy.
Yeah.
Not for me. Not for me. And stumbled upon sports psychology.
That's
and
cool.
It was, and that was my new calling. It was like basketball.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So like when you find it, it's like, that is what I was born to do.
Yes. Yeah. It's
totally
really,
cool.
Really cool.
So a person recommended a book, Mastery, by Green is his last name.
Okay.
The author. He also wrote 48 Laws of Power.
Okay.
Joseph Green. Am I saying? Yeah. But anyway, about that, like your calling, your craft, how you can get better at that, like mastering it.
Yeah.
It just reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So from your knowledge and experience, looking back at yourself, if you were to treat little Nicole, young high school athlete, entering in the competitive years of high school sports, what would you recommend? Or even looking back then and be like, why is this particular athlete reacting the way that she is? Where does this lack of confidence come? Like, where do they even come from to begin with? Like, what predisposed you to having this lack of confidence and then going into the games? Yeah,
and I think so confidence, belief in your abilities, and that's the thing. Is like I did believe that I could do stuff, but again, I think it was just the lack of tools on the mental side where I didn't have that, right? Like I knew how to dribble the ball. I could read the court. I had court awareness. Like I could shoot. I could drive in. I could play. Defense was my strength. What scared me, or I feared, opposite of confidence, my doubt came in was I don't know how to handle fear, or I don't know how to handle letting go of a mistake. I don't know how to handle anger, frustration, nerves when they come up. And it's scary not knowing how to handle that stuff, because again,
so it's the fear of like, if something comes up in this game that I'm looking forward to in the future that hasn't happened yet. And something does happen and I get fearful or scared or like all these things and like self-doubt. Will I be able to handle it when I get there?
Yeah.
So that's anxiety then, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an anxiety problem.
Well, yeah. Anxiousness and again, lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
Lack of knowledge. Like again, a lot of what everyone tells us is, hey, like go in and just be confident. Like don't get angry. Don't worry.
It's the worst.
You'll be all right. And it's like, okay, but what if I I don't know how to not be worried. I don't know how to manage the worry when it comes up or the frustration when it comes up or how to be nice to myself. Yeah. I mean, we're all our harshest self-critics and like we go to school and like school, sports, everything. It's all problem fixed, like orientation. It's all, okay, you're doing this wrong, and this wrong. How do you fix it? How do you get better? It's never like, hey, you did this really well. This is good. You're strong in this, but we got to work a little bit on this. Right.
So some positive reinforcement too.
Yeah. And it kind of, with that, it teaches athletes how to acknowledge those things, how to acknowledge it for themselves. Like we're not really taught to be nice to ourselves. We're not. And then you say it and people are like, well, that's soft. That's, but it's like, well, actually, like we kind of need that. Like we're going to be with ourselves forever. Yeah. Like it's me, for sure. And I gotta know how to be my own best friend.
I'd be interested in hearing somebody that would say, oh, that's soft, where they're at. And I would assume probably some kind of underlying insecurity for that individual that would be trying to call somebody out for being soft if they're trying to like manage their emotions better or acknowledge that emotional distress happens in high intense situations. Yeah. The pressure you put on yourself usually, right? As an athlete. Yeah. I would question that guy or girl, be like, you're probably insecure, right? Like if you're going to project that on somebody else.
It would be interesting to have a conversation. And I think, there's a lot of different approaches and different beliefs out there and how people should go about it. And this is that's the way that I go about my work and what I believe in. And if that works for them, great. But this works for the people that I'm working with and it works for me. So I'm gonna roll with that.
What do you recommend then for parents? Okay. So parents, because you work with youth athletes mostly. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of parents, and I'm sure very involved, want them to be the best they can be. Yeah. Have a lot of suggestions, probably unsolicited advice. Yeah. It's sometimes probably at the detriment of their kids, right? As they're young kid athletes. Yeah. What recommendations do you have for for the parents of the kids who they notice their kids are struggling and they want to help, of course. Yeah. What suggestions do you have them? Because remember, like, I think you mentioned it before, and I have people that I'm close with that they've mentioned their previous athletic endeavors also. Yeah. Parents on the sideline, like, you got to get in there. Yeah. Go get the ball. Yeah. Right. Or just do this. Yeah. And you're like, you're not helping. Right. You're making me shut down more. Right. Right. Yeah. So do you see that a lot? And then what recommendations do you have? Yeah. So I think it's a mixture of just different things. Parents and athletes. Again, I think you hit a good point of like parents, they invest so much emotionally. They invest money, they invest time. They want what's best for their kid and they care about them so much. So coming from their angle, they're just going off of what they grew up learning on top of all the investment that they have in their kid and how much love they have for their kid. So that's hard in itself because usually the way that they are speaking to their kid or, however it's probably the way that their parents were. Right. Or a coach was, or a teacher was. And that's what they know. And that's how they think they can help. The other thing that you mentioned is like solutions. Like that's like, I would say to parents, just like take a minute and listen. Even if it's like an awkward silence, let the kid process and just think for a second without like solution and talking and trying to give them the answer, like just sit there for a minute and let them kind of like see what they come up with. Yeah. And that can be hard because some, especially teenagers, they usually don't want to talk. Yeah. So that can be a challenge. But
But yeah, I would say listen and just validating, reassuring. Validating meaning like if you had a crappy game, they felt like it was crappy, then it was crappy.
Yeah.
No, that sucks. Like,
accept reality.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And they're how they're feeling. Right. Like a lot of times, and I know I was a case of this too. Like my mindset, I was so focused on everything that I did bad. I'd come out of the game and I couldn't even remember the things that I did well or how many points I scored, or like I'd come out of the game and just be so upset. And my parents were like, Nicole, like, don't you remember this? And I'm like, what? I didn't do that. And they're like, Nicole, yeah, you did. You did a lot of great things too, And I think that was helpful, but at the same time, like acknowledging and saying, hey, all right, so you feel like you didn't play well. And that's hard. That's really tough. And just saying that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the sense of relief, like when someone tells you that and you're super frustrated or worried or upset and someone's like, this is a really frustrating situation.
Yeah.
It's hard what you're going through. It's just like, finally, like someone hears me.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now the door's open. Now let's talk a little bit more. And then it's like, now suggest the solutions. Okay. Right. All right, let's talk.
So validating first, for sure.
Yeah.
I know for me, like even now, right? Like me and my wife and stuff, we're chatting. Yeah. And if I'm like, this is going through this and that. And when she's just like, that sounds like it's really hard. It sounds like it's frustrating for you. I'm like, yeah. Finally, somebody understand,
Yeah.
About time somebody listened,
Yeah, my fiance is very good at that too. So we're like,
oh, good.
Yeah, he's very good at that. So it's nice.
Yeah. I'm sure you've coached him on that.
I think I was actually very impressed from the get-go. He already had, cool. Yeah. And I don't know, like the way he was raised, he was in sales for a long time too. So like,
super in tune.
Yeah, just knowing how to have a really great conversation and listen. So, it's nice. Yeah. It's really nice.
I heard, one thing, a Kobe quote that I wanted to bring up recently, and I was like, man, I forgot how freaking great Kobe was. I know. Like he was so good.
He was.
Like very. Yeah. The GOATs of basketball and Michael Jordan, LeBron James for sure. Kobe Bryant 100% needs to be in that conversation. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh. But anyway, he was just mentioning like, I think he was pretty dialed in for the mental game. It seems like, he's pretty focused and hard. He was Mamba mentality is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was dialed in. But I remember there was a clip I came across. He was talking about how like, sometimes you can't control the things you can control and not control. Yeah. First recognizing the things you can't, right? So you can't control the outcomes. Yep. But you can really control like your preparation, of course, going through all the pre-game routines and pre-shot routines and mental rehearsal, all those things. Yeah. And then that helps with confidence, I would assume. Yes. Okay, cool. So the preparation, and then it's like, at that point, I just got to do the thing. And I can't concern myself with the outcomes. I can't control that. Right. So weighing all the success, failure, and my validation, my value as a person based on the outcome may be inherently wrong because you can't control the outcome anyway. Yeah. So when it does happen of like, I failed, that sucks. Right. But all I can do now is just go through the same habits and practice routine and same things that I know are going to lead to success. And then focus as much as I can on that. And not concern myself with the outcome because again, I can't control that anyway. Right. Versus like letting it like really hold you down. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like my success or failure is measured off of me making that shot or winning the game, and I didn't 3 times in a row. Therefore, my self-value was worse. Right. Which affects your performance. Definitely. So anyway, I'm sure you've seen that before. Oh yeah. You go with the same training stuff with some of your clients. Yeah, all the time. You see that a lot, and it ties into just like a very, very locked in on outcome and results. And it's hard because again, that's what our culture is surrounded by. Did you get the A? What percentage did you get? Yeah. What was your grade? Yeah. What was your grade? How much points did you score? How many points did you score? How many unforced errors did you make? How do we lessen that? How many times did you approach the net? It's like all numbers, and we do well with numbers. Don't get me wrong, but it's like Caitlin Clark. There was a interview I actually posted on my story yesterday, and an interviewer asked her something like, it was something along the lines of,
how do you feel about like losing the game? Like pretty much insinuating that because she lost the national championship, like she's no good now. Like she's not the GOAT. Like that was kind of like the question. And she's like, well, and it's so cool because I think like now more and more athletes are starting to like realize this and kind of change the messaging on media, because media is like actually pretty annoying.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Finally, you said that.
Yes. It's really annoying, and it hurts. It hurts the mental side. Like even the announcers on the games, you're just like, you know, like kids are listening to what you're saying about players, right? That are making like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Anyway.
There was JJ Redick talked about this recently to Stephen A. Smith.
Okay.
And I was like, finally.
Yeah.
He was like, you asking those questions shows me that you have no athletic background. No. You have no idea what the F you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the suggestions that you're making also just your lack of IQ and understanding what it is to be a competitor and an athlete.
Yeah.
And I was like, high five. About these reporters, like just be quiet.
Yes.
And like, okay, now we understand, duh. They're just trying to get emotional reactions.
Right. Of course.
To get a blow up.
That's what makes the story.
To make the story appealing.
Yeah.
Which is the same thing for mainstream media.
Yeah.
In general.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
So anyway, I guess recognizing it for what it is.
Yeah. So Caitlin Clark, what she was saying is, you know, she pretty much answered the question. She was like, to base my worth as a player and as a person off 40 minutes compared to, you know, what I've done and really what the main reason of why I play is ridiculous. She pretty much just like shut him down or her down. I don't know if it was a male or if whatever. Yeah, the reporter. Thank you. And it was just like, it's not about winning championships. Yeah, that's great and all, but it's about like being a role model and leaving like a legacy and being a good person and uplifting women's sports, all the stuff. And so to what you were saying about Mamba mentality, like it makes sense, but it's hard. It's really hard not to focus on that, because then you think about parents, coaches, again, the way that we all function daily. And it's like, are you hitting the numbers?
Right.
Are you hitting the numbers? You got to do more. You got to do more. You're not doing enough. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that. And it's like, that's why they're so focused on winning and losing and scoring and all that. So it's like, how do you start to shift that? How do you start to shift that mindset and start to look at, and it takes time. It's like, that's the other thing with the mental side. Everyone's like, well, how can I just like figure it out, make the change? It's like, it takes like years. You're not unlearning, but you are recognizing patterns that you've done for
totally unlearning things you've learned. And you're reinforcing the things that sometimes you don't want to do more. And it's
hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Totally.
So anyway, I completely agree with that.
I'll relate that to golf, right? If I break 90, it's a great day. Like, I'm not mad. Yeah. If I break 95, I'm like, I could have done better. So that's where I'm at. Okay. So by no means am I a pro. But we help a lot of golfers for sure. The first thing I say, I'm not a golf pro, but mechanics and pain, like that's what we can work through.
Right.
But anyway, so with that being said, like for improving a golf game, I'm going to go to the range and just hit 1,000 balls in practice.
Yeah.
If I don't know what I'm doing, I'm reinforcing bad habits further, which makes it harder to unlearn. And the beginning process is like unlearning the things that you thought were good to then implement the new things that actually are helpful. That sounds like what you were saying. And 100% is super hard.
Super hard. And then on top of that, what you said earlier too is like, a lot of people look to the outcome, and if it's not showing up, like I get golfers, I get tennis players, that's like, and even basketball players that start to question and change things when really like consistency is probably going to lead to what you're wanting outcome wise. But because the outcome, you're not getting it consistently what you want, then you make changes, and now you're, there's, of course, you got to make adjustments here and there, but like that constant, like, oh, I didn't win. Now I got to go back and like change things around. Okay. Now I got to go back. And it's like, you're never gonna see your, like, it's just routine consistency.
Right. So you're negatively affecting the potential consistency that you would have if you just stuck to the same thing with minor refinements.
Yeah.
Versus like, that didn't work, change everything.
Yeah.
That's not working, change everything. And you're just constantly changing everything and still not getting the outcomes and it's making it more challenging to get those outcomes.
Yeah.
That makes sense. With the parent thing.
Yes.
Has there been situations where you're also coaching the athlete on how to navigate their parents?
Yes. Yes. And also speaking with parents.
Because I imagine this could be very challenging, right? There's been situations that I've been a part of or recognized, seen and stuff like that. Where like the moms and dads, of course, want the best, right? For the athlete, but they don't get it.
Yeah.
And then they're trying to coach the kid and opposite or just not help what they might think is helpful, but actually isn't helpful. And it might be a counterintuitive thing of what they're already trying to do and learn, or also their own personality and stuff also. Right. Which is just super not great, right? It's like mental performance coach like yourself, other coaches, and they're like, focus on this, this, and this. This is what's going to lead to consistency. They have a lot of credibility in the field. Cool. And then they hear something else from their parents, like, no. You need to work on this, this, and this. And it's like, I'm hearing conflicting things. And it's also making me question, right, what the other coaches or the professionals like yourself are saying. So then it comes into like, well, you just need to learn how to navigate your parents.
And I would say like, I don't know if I like the word navigate, but I will say when athletes continue to bring parents up, it's like, okay, well, we need to think about bringing them into the conversation because there's a lack of communication between the two of you.
Just misfiring.
Yeah. Like you don't know how they feel. They don't know how you feel. And you all keep doing the same stuff and it ain't working. So we need to all sit in a room and like figure it out. And some athletes and parents want to do that. And it's tough conversations, but it ends up working out really well at the end of the conversation. Cause now we're all on the same page and we can work through the stuff that, that's going on. We can communicate better. Right. And then, everything when it's not all said and put on the table and worked through, well, it stays the same. So
yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. That's I'm sure it's very tough. So what suggestions do you have for parents or for young athletes who have a very zealous parent that they end up that athlete shuts down, right? Yeah. Do this, do that. And like on field. And then they're like, shut up, mom and dad, Right. Yeah. And they end up shutting down and retracting. Yeah. Yeah. What do you recommend for that? I'm sure you've seen that a lot. Yeah. I mean, again, like parents really care about their kids. They want what's best, and all parents are different. So are all athletes. They respond differently, So I think the big thing, kind of like going back to the out of your control stuff, and this goes with like coaches and teammates and opponents too. Like it's out of your control, and that's how it's going to be. And, accepting the fact that it's like that, as long as it's, safe, accepting the fact that it's like that, and like, don't be surprised when it comes up again, because it will. And just knowing that, hey, that's out of my control. Let's use some of these skills to just help me manage the feelings, the thoughts that come up, during that interaction. And again, when I'm having these conversations, it's tough because it's the same with coaches. Like they just want what's best. And I make sure when having conversations with the athletes or the parents, I'm advocating on both sides, because at the end of the day, they all want the same thing. Yeah. They all want to be really great and get into college and play in college or make it on it on tour. They all want the same thing. So it's advocating on both ends and really trying to stress that, hey, we all want the same thing. Yeah, on the same page here.
How can we make it work? What, so yeah. And I like through my process, parents aren't in the dark. Like I'm telling them what we're going over. I'm telling them, hey, I'm noticing some of this stuff. I'm noticing progress here. This is what we're working on. So they're aware of what's going on as well. And if they feel they need to make changes on their end, then they can, So
I imagine too, then it would be a difficult, a fine line of like, I don't want to create an us versus them.
Yeah, no,
because that would be really bad.
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, that's the same with like coaches and teammates. Everybody's on the same team. Yeah. Everybody's on the same team. It's just, again, it's that lack of communication and all our own stuff that we're not sharing, and it's just building up, and then we're using how we are and putting it out there, and it's like, okay, we gotta all come together because, again, we all want the same thing. Just got to figure out how to make it work.
What coaching back to the reporter thing? What coaching suggestions do you have for athletes navigating reporters and stuff?
Yeah.
So how do you feel about losing the game for everybody and completely tarnishing your whole career in college? It's like, what the why would
you ask?
Oh, now I know why they're asking that.
Right.
But then being like, you're an idiot, you know?
Right. And again, I think it goes back to like preparation of those conversations. Like, I would not be surprised if in college, especially at those bigger schools, they are practicing how to respond, especially with all the NIL stuff. Oh yeah. They probably have like a class, or I would not be surprised.
Yeah.
Or managers or something that are overseeing and teaching them things to say, so that doesn't blow up in their face, right? Because those questions are definitely
meant to do that.
Poke.
Totally.
So, and it's just, I mean, they're, it's 20-year-old kids that are just doing what they want to do, and they made it. And it's like, hey, it blows my mind. But yeah, I think just the same things, like they're performing in that moment. They are performing. Yeah. They're in an interview. Yeah. And in those moments, just like on the basketball court, on the field, on the course, whatever it is, those questions is like an opponent that keeps like taking cheap shots at you, or is that like mistake that keeps happening, that question that's just like, and it's like, let me just take a breath here. Let me slow down. And now let me answer how I should. Yeah.
There was I remember back in 10 years ago, Jameis Winston was the quarterback for Florida State. Yeah. And great quarterback, great athlete, did well. Yeah. Baseball player as well. So multi-sport athlete, cool. Yeah. And they did really, I forget what it was, but he did great, had a great game. Everyone's celebrating on the field, and Jimbo Fisher's giving a hug, reporters shoving a microphone in his face, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing he's about to get interviewed. And Jimbo in his ear was like, humble pie. Just respond with humble pie, Yeah. And I was like, that's it. He's just coaching him right there 5 seconds before he's going to get a microphone shoved in his face. Right. Right. And I was like, I rebonded. I was like, there it is. I saw it. That's totally makes sense.
That's the moment. Yeah. That's the moment. Yeah. So
is anything authentic then, you think, like with those interviews? Like it's all theater, right? It's just like I'm performing here. Yes. On an opponent who I know is trying to poke me, right? Mm-hmm. They're trying to poke me to get reviews and stimulate, an emotional response to cause a viral moment, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is anything authentic then?
That's a good question. I think yes, because you could go the same side of it, like being out on the court. Like you have those players like Angel Reese. She's that player that like talks.
Trash.
Talks trash. Thank you. I couldn't think of another word. Talks trash. Yeah. And, last year was a little bit harsher, but that's her. That's it.
It's her persona.
Yeah. And that's cool. And she also plays really great basketball. Caitlin Clark is a little bit more like, doesn't really do anything. She kind of just is like, after scoring like threes. So is that genuine stuff? Yeah. And I think that what's cool is you can hear when it's genuine and you can hear when it's not in the interviews. Well, I can. And it's like her answer was genuine. You can hear players' frustration when it is a ridiculous question.
Yeah, of course.
And they answer in a way that is professional and respectful, and honest, So while it's let me stay composed, I think there is authenticity to those answers, just like on the course, where they're staying composed, but they do still have and show that passion when they play.
Yeah. With something I was just thining about, common answers I hear over and over again. Mm-hmm. I'm they're fishing, but they're not getting what they want. They have to continue to do it. And then the one time somebody blows up and it's like an emotional reaction, like Erin Andrews, when she interviewed Richard Sherman after that.
Yeah.
Great timing, you know?
Right.
Like who do you mean? And what was said, you know? Well, I'll tell you, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, that's what she was trying to do.
Yep.
But the coaches, same thing, you know, it's like, hey, what strategy can you do for the second half, you know? And this person's really failing and you guys aren't really doing great on defense and offense. He's like, you know, we really need to put a lot of emphasis on the defense and really stopping the ball. And then we're going to do our best and really just move forward.
Yeah.
It's like you didn't answer the question.
No.
It's just the same, like a blanket answer. And they move on to the next one. And the guy is very frustrated, obviously. But I just hear that same answer over and over and over again with like a large majority of everybody that answers, especially mid-game. So that's why I was like, man, is it even authentic? They're just saying what they want, what they need to say to just get it over with.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. But they're not going to say on live TV like what their plan is.
No, exactly.
You know, like it's kind of like,
let me tell you my secret. So we're really gonna target this.
Go to the locker room and we're gonna write this play on the board, and this is the play, and this is what we're gonna do, and we're actually gonna sit this guy. It's like they're not gonna tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, why? What's the point of even doing the halftime interviews?
Right. Exactly.
Like, actually, you know. So.
Oh man. Well, yeah. It's funny, but I feel like unless you were an athlete, you really don't see that or get it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
But most people aren't, but anyway.
Yeah. They wanna.
So you were mentioning last time the greats, right, as a mental performance coach.
Yeah.
Optimizing performance, because totally, I think everyone's in agreement, like the mental game is the separating factor for high performers and all-stars versus mediocre players, despite the same physical attributes and athleticism. Right. So it's the mental game.
Yeah.
And the greats are able to recognize when they're not in a good mental state.
Yep.
And then get back into it quickly and then stay in the mental state. That's a good one, advantageous one for more consistently and longer periods to perform better.
Right.
How are the greats able to recognize when they're out?
That's a good question.
Versus just being like, just continually going with the direction they're going and then being like, holy crap, the last 45 minutes I've been in a funk. You know what I mean?
Right. Or I just, it's already, right.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. So lots of practice of awareness with the mindset and acknowledging where you're at. So, and, you know, a lot of times my dad was actually talking to me about football last night and how his high school team would take, he was back in the day.
I still do that.
Undefeated Cardinal Newman, like 82 or whatever it was.
We wanted to state. If coach would have put me in, man, we would have.
Yeah. Undefeated whole season. He was so pumped about it, but he actually said something quite interesting. Yeah. He's like, we had this kicker and like, teenager would just go out and make field goals from like the 40 or 50 and like ended up going and playing pro for a long, like 10 years, played in the NFL, like
cool, just
lights out. And he's like, you know, because we had that great kicker, I don't know if it was because of that, but his coach would like 20% of practice would be practicing special teams and kickoffs and punts. And he was like, that separated us. And I started thinking about it because I get a lot of athletes where we meet and the focus when they go out and play is all on the technical and tactical side. And I'm like, hey, gotta use these skills. Hey, gotta use these skills. And it's like, why? Like I'm trying, but like I also the score and this and I messed up here and da da da. And it's like, okay, for like 20% of practice, I need the focus to be more so on like mentals first, the technical and tactical stuff second, right? So when my dad said that last night, I was like, bing, because I had a conversation with a golfer the other day and that's what I had to tell them. I was like, you have to put the mental side first. Like you just have to, and that's how you're going to work on it. When you're out there playing, like the intention behind playing has to be working on that mental side because that's when you're going to start to recognize, be aware, and start using the tools that I teach you more intentionally to where you see change. We play, like I remember basketball practice, first hour of practice would be the technical skills, layup lines, dribbling drills, whatever, practicing rebounding. And then like the second half of practice would be all plays. technical, tactical. But like, when are we taking the time to like sit in practice to be like, okay, let's work on mental now. Let's just take 30 minutes, 10 minutes to just say, okay, how are you going to do mentally on this hole, you know, or on in this scrimmage, this tough like game or like, you know, practice game or whatever.
Yeah.
And really lock in on it. And I think from my readings and what I hear like in interviews, I know the greats, they take the time to really lock in and put effort into the mental side.
Yeah. Totally.
At practice.
That makes sense.
And then they start to realize things, just like as if you were to practice the technical and tactical stuff at practice.
Right.
Right. So they put the time in. It's not like a second thought. It's the first thought. And so they realize what works for them. Everybody's different. Everyone has different tendencies that work for them. And sometimes those things that work for them stop working when they're introduced to a new challenge, right? And so then they have to try something new. But once you're able to figure out who you are and what works for you and what sets you off and what bothers you, and start to work on finding a balance of those things and shifting the mindset and all that, and it's 20% of your practice for however long to where you can actually figure it out. Okay, now what works for you? And then that's how they notice.
That's interesting. It makes total sense, as in like, if you're not succeeding like you want to, which you can't control, but you can only control what you can do, of course.
Right.
But the outcomes still aren't consistently coming like you want. Mm-hmm. Right now, the tacticals and your skills aren't the limiting factor. Mm-hmm. It's your mentals.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift priorities here then.
Right.
You're good skills and you're good tactical. Yeah. You're very athletic. Mm-hmm. We got it. Mm-hmm. But you're not as great as you want to be. Okay, we need to prioritize in the mentals component. That is your constraint here. That's the bottleneck.
Right.
All right, so then let's practice the mentals. What does that look like in practice? Hey guys, we're going to do 30 minutes of mentals practice right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do we do?
That's that's a great
Coach Nicole's going to come in here.
Let's go. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, actually. And some things you already do. So like, go to a basketball practice. I remember being a manager at Florida State, and it was like, you know, they'd practice game scenarios where they'd put a certain score up on the board. They'd create the scenario and try to almost like reenact as if it was this like nerve-wracking, pressured situation.
Right.
I'm assuming most teams probably do that, right? Pretty sure I did it in high school.
Yeah.
Those things should be practiced. Yeah. But that's a great example.
We didn't do any of that.
Oh no.
Back in my day, back in the glory days, we were undefeated. We lost one game, won the state championship. It's funny. I'm not making fun of anybody. No. Because I do it. But then also I'm like, man, I'm trying to instill in these young athletes that we still see, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you're going to remember this for the rest of your life.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be super impactful.
It will. It is.
So like, enjoy it and have fun. Do your best.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
Back to that. So like, creating scenarios in your mind, creating scenarios like as best as you can, and feeling that pressure. So like, an activity I do just in session is we write down like the negative, nasty thoughts that you say to yourself. Okay. And then we go through this activity where I'm like, okay, we're going to start with the first thought on the sheet. And I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I want you to read the thought and really get into that headspace that you get into when you start thinking about this.
The negative one.
The negative one.
Okay.
And just let yourself go there. Right? It's not going to be exactly the same, not going to be as intense, but we want to try to get as close as possible.
A little taste of it.
Yeah. And kind of feel that. And then I take them through just noticing the thought, right? Just to create that separation. So then I say, okay, repeat after me. We do the exercise. But something like that, where it's like, all right, let's take 10 seconds, everybody. Take the next 10, 20 seconds. And I want you to get in a headspace where you're like, when you're in a pressured situation, you feel super nervous. Take 20 seconds and try to get into that space. And again, it's going to take time. It's not like you're going to be like, I have some people, I've done group sessions where there's been athletes that's like, well, I can't make emotions come up. And I'm like, okay, well then how can you make them go away?
Ooh.
Yeah. But it's like, try.
Mic drop.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, you can get into that space if you
So
really
then how
want
can you make them go away?
Right.
Oh, snap.
Right. Wait a minute. So try to get yourself in that space. Okay. And then let's go through the situation. Let's play. and then see how you manage it. Hey, how are you going to go into the situation before the whistle blows? Are you taking deep breaths? Like, what are you doing? What have you worked on with the mental coach where you're practicing that stuff, and then let's go execute now. And then after, let's talk about it. Okay, how did you do? How did you feel? It's a lot. It would be a lot more, in my opinion, where we're like going through some drills, but then we talk about it.
Yeah.
Reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned, like, I can't make emotions come up. I'm like, dude, you totally can.
Yeah.
How does any actor in Hollywood cry on instant, right? Or like, they're not actually upset, by the way. They're just like acting.
Right.
So how can you make that happen?
Yeah.
Like, emotions are literally just neurotransmitters, right? That flood in and flood out, and that can be manipulated and managed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But totally. So then how do you make them go away effectively when it's like, yo, the whistle's blowing in 5 seconds?
Right. Or manage them, as you said.
Manage
them in that time. And so then it's like, let's practice it. Or even just giving them challenging drills to go through where it's going to create frustration, where it's going to, like, they're on the documentary for Michael Jordan, when he was playing for the Bulls, they would be scrimmaging and like Michael's team would be up by like 10 points and the coach would switch Michael to the other team and with another player. So now he's down. Like, that would set a lot of athletes off.
I like that.
That's and cool. Now it's like, okay, how do you come back from that? So you're technically training him on a lot of different stuff. Yeah. But then it's putting it into action, reflecting on it. Okay, how did this like help you? Yeah. Like, what is working?
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So what you were just describing, whatever self-dialogue you have in a negative space and you're beating yourself up, right? Whatever that phrase or whatever you call yourself, whatever you do, write it down and then get in, try as best you can to get in there. Yeah. And then on top of like a nervous situation, okay, now play. How did you feel? Yeah. Right. So then you were like, remember that. So that stimulates some awareness. So when you do get to that state, in the middle of a game, you're like, I recognize this.
Yeah, I've done this before.
I feel this.
Where it's not like,
I know this is. Yeah. Some familiarity. And then you're like, now I recognize what this feels like and really what it is. Now I can intervene. Okay, so now the next step is intervention. Yeah. Which is usually what?
Oh, it depends on
Coach Nicole, what do we do now? Cool. Yeah. We got it. Now we're all like bummed and depressed and nervous.
Yeah, nervous.
And we suck. Like, now what?
Yeah. A lot of different, it again depends on the athlete and what works for them. If it's some sort of like pick me up routine, or if it's some sort of channeling routine. Like there was a video of Kittle from San Fran. And he was talking about when he was in college, he started working with a mental performance coach. And what he struggled with was he was fine on the blocking plays. But when it came to a route and he had to, he could be possibly one of the people that caught the ball, he started to get in his head prior to the play. Right. And so, I got to run just start overthinking everything, overfocusing. And so what they did is they created a reset button on his arm. And so he would every day before the game, he'd put tape around his arm, he'd draw a button, and after every single play, he'd hit the reset, even if it was a good play, he'd hit the reset so that if he was too excited, reset. If he was too upset with what happened, reset. And then he goes on to talk about, being professional. He doesn't have the button anymore, but that's why he has these 2 tattoos on his arm. He has like a Joker tattoo and another tattoo. And for him, that's the reset. And it's also like a channeling of energy. He didn't go into detail about what that is, but again, I think it just goes to show that like depending on the needs of the athlete and the skills that we have to provide you, then we figure out what works. Yeah. Right? What is functional for you. Yeah. Right. Another one, John Rahm, right, works with a mental performance coach, and like in between shots, he like has this like whole negative internal dialogue where he's just like, but as soon as he gets to the next ball, that's him letting it all out, gets to the next ball, and that works for him. Yeah. He's
it's like an energy release.
Yeah.
I remember because a couple years ago in his earlier times in the tour, he was like a club thrower, or like a slammer, yelling. He was a hothead.
Yeah. But that was a way for him to channel that energy that he was feeling. And I think that's where we get stuck on the mental side. Because everyone believes that you have to be calm. And it's like, guess what? Not everybody are calm people.
Yeah, right.
Like, And to tell them to be calm is even more anxiety inducing and frustrating.
Yeah, totally.
And you're just they're gonna pop off even more because they can't get calm.
Yeah.
You know?
I think a huge pet peeve of mine, what I've noticed in my own athletic careers and other things, people that have coached me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We're like, no. What you need to do is this. And I'm like, you're just looking back. I'm like, you're just projecting what you would have wanted.
Yeah.
And you have no awareness maybe that other people might have a different perspective.
Right. Or just different, what works for them.
What works? Yeah. Different, what works better,
Okay.
For sure.
And that was McCarthy, Michigan quarterback. He did an interview because the whole big thing was like him doing this pregame routine. Listen to Bob, meditate under the field goal post, take off his shoes. Like it was like the whole.
Listen to who?
Bob Marley.
Oh, okay.
Bob Marley. So he'd listen to that all morning leading up to the game, and then prior to the game, takes off his shoes, walks on the grass, sits under the goalpost, and meditates.
It's him.
That's him. That's what works for him.
Cool.
And that he gets into a calm state, right? And they were interviewing him and they were like, hey, like, how'd you come to that? Like, what did you practice that? Like, how long have you been doing that? He's like, growing up, he went to IMG. He was like, growing up, I would look at all the great people and I would try and pull things from what they did. And it never just seemed to work for me. And it was frustrating because it worked for them and they're these great athletes, but it never seemed to work for me. He was like, so, once I got into college, I decided I'm going to take some time to figure out myself and what I think would work for myself. And it was experimenting, but this is what I came up with and it works. So 2 things, as you said, what other people do doesn't necessarily always work for you. 1, 2, and you have to figure that out for yourself. You got to know who you are. And that's reflection and awareness. 2, what was my second point? That it was experimenting.
Yeah.
It took time to get there. It wasn't just like, I got it and it worked. It's like he took his time to try different things, give it a shot, and then came up with this routine. And now he, he's going to be in NFL draft, probably go pretty quickly and won the national championship for football.
Yeah.
It's
pretty incredible.
Yeah. So it's not, hey, listen to Bob and sit under the goalpost and meditate. It's, hey, figure out what works for you and experiment.
Yeah. And over time, you'll refine and realize some things.
Exactly. Just like your game.
Yeah. That's awesome. Man, I wish I had this when I was an athlete.
Yeah, same.
Right? Gosh darn it.
I know.
It's like Napoleon Dynamite, quickest time machine, you can go back. Right. Throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Yeah. Shit.
Do you ever see that movie, Napoleon Dynamite?
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago. The birds.
Yeah, oh my god, the butterfly.
The butterfly.
It made me feel so weird, man.
It was awkward.
I was like, it's not my thing. But now, some of the quotes are hilarious.
Yeah.
That's okay. You mentioned everyone's different, right? And they have their own perspectives and beliefs and the way they view things and what works for them.
Yeah.
And their own identity as an athlete.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I've noticed, I would hope some attunement of some athletes have their own personas and the way they project themselves, the way they see themselves, and they have their own identity, right? Some seem to portray themselves as the villain, right? Like Draymond Green.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then some are very stoic and very even keel, like Kawhi Leonard, right?
Yeah.
Russell Westbrook is definitely a firecracker, How do you recommend people find their identity as an athlete or as a person,
Yeah, right. Again, self-reflection, just really taking the time to think about it, asking yourself different types of questions as far as what matters to you. When you've played your best,
where were you at? Yeah.
Yeah. And another good question is if it was a perfect world and no one else's opinions mattered, who would you be? What would you be doing? Because there's definitely you have to be professional within anything. You got to have that respect. Got to have professional. But how do you take who you want to be and fit it to that? So John Rahm again, rather than throwing his club under his breath, just kind of having it out. Cool. That's another way to channel that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What did I point to? I just lost my train of thought.
I know you had something.
It was really cool.
Okay.
When I pointed to you, what were you saying?
I was
like, I'm going to say something.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me think back. So I said, now I'm blanking. John Rahm, everybody's different. Everyone needs to figure it out. Reflection, knowing who you want to be, asking yourself in a perfect world.
Okay, that inauthentic.
All
right. The best definition of authenticity I've heard is, how would you act if you had no repercussions and no punishment?
Yeah.
Like no punishment, which comes also with like judgment or like people looking down on you or thinking you're weird, right? Just how would you act if nobody was going to punish you and you had no repercussions?
Yeah.
That's your best authentic self, right? Saying whatever you like, the things that you would want to say and project, not like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation.
Right.
But I was like, man, that makes total sense, because people act, I know I'm myself, right?
Oh yeah.
Projecting and acting a certain way to be accepted,
right?
Fear of rejection, fear of failure, or looking, or shameful, like whatever, looking weird or whatever, you know?
Right. Or acting within your box you've been placed in, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's annoying.
That's super annoying.
It is. It's really annoying.
What would you say for you then would be for your, as an athlete back in the day, right? If you were to go back and coach young Nicole in high school, be like, be your identity, find yourself in the best authenticity that you can, be yourself. What would your answer have been?
A hothead that speaks my mind.
Okay. So you felt you were muffled and okay.
Yeah.
So were you more of like John Rahm's labeled as a hothead, right? But just more emotionally outbursting, more of a firecracker?
Yeah.
Okay. You're pretty subdued. I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah. 2 years of grad school where you just...
We'll do that.
Learn to listen to people.
Really done wonders for
and many years of repercussion of speaking my mind. So
more outspoken, more speaking your mind, and more expressing emotions.
Yeah.
Okay. So then what would your strategies have been then? Yell into a towel, or...
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like, it would be some sort of like yelling and something physical. I was a very physical athlete too. That's why I loved basketball, because you could just like run into people and it would probably be something physical, like jumping or clapping really loudly, maybe even probably like slapping my leg or something. It would be something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
We're very similar. If I let it out, really hard, I felt a lot better. Yeah. Which is pretty alarming for people around me, Like, you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm good, or like punching my fists, which didn't feel good. Yeah. So someone like that, what do you recommend then? Because you can't punch your leg, right? You're like, no, you don't want to do that. You can't punch your fist.
You don't want to do that. There's a lot of different things that you could try depending on the sport. Like I said, like jumping. I'd
be interested to see with all this stuff, smacking a helmet. Yeah. I wonder if there'd be like a punching bag or a heavy bag on a sideline for some people.
I've told tennis players, I'm like, safe. Squeeze the ball as hard as you can. Squeeze the racket as hard as you can. Like I said, like jumping up and down, like doing some like hops or like clapping really hard.
I could imagine that too. The jump, like big old squat jumps.
Just popping up. Yeah.
Get up there as high as you can, 10 times in a row.
Just like release it, like let it out.
Yeah. Cause that's tough, Yeah. Like even now, like I was saying earlier, like as a dad, managing my emotions and stress and anxiety, whatever, and as a spouse, whatever, it's challenging, and you can't just like, be super emotionally outbursting as like the rock of the family in front of people. To be very paralyzing and negative, right? With bad repercussions.
Yeah.
Something was recommended to me recently. The jump squats are great. I like that. Yeah. It's just banging out push-ups.
Yeah. Nice.
You need to release it. Just like get on the ground and just freaking get after it.
Yeah.
100, like 50 right away. Just bang it out. It's like, what if I'm like not warm? I don't want to hurt my rotator cuff, It's like
the PT comes out.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so what other recommendations do you have then?
Yeah. So I think, again, just that awareness piece I think is always helpful. Like I do this technique where it's, like performance zones, and just by giving the athlete a way to like label what it is, it's like, it's wild. It just kind of makes all the difference. And I use it for communication with parents and athletes. So it's red light, green light, yellow light. And red, spiraling out of control. Green is go, flow. And yellow is like a funky, inconsistent zone.
As in like, okay, athlete, where are you at right now?
Yeah.
Red.
Yep.
Oh, I'm green.
Yeah.
I'm a greenish yellow.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you're more aware. You could be more proactive. I use that with my fiance. Like if I'm just like tired, hungry, just got home from work and he's ball of energy. And I'm like, hey, I'm in the red. I need to eat food.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right. And then he leaves me alone.
Yeah.
You know, and vice versa. Yeah. But it works because then, there's another one that I learned and it's 3, 5, 8. So like everybody's energy levels can be 1 to 10. Right. But just to keep it simple, you go 3, 5, and 8. 8's like you're super high energy. You're like happy and you're like, woo, 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 excited. Yeah. 3, you're kind of like,
yeah.
You know, like, okay, I'm here. Like, and 5 is like in the middle. Like you're kind of you're coasting. Right. And I use that with him too. I'm like, hey, you're at an 8. I'm at a 3 or vice versa. I'm at an 8. I can tell you're at a 3. And then we kind of like try to meet in the middle at a 5, you know? So just having that tool, it like helps with the communication.
100%.
You know?
That is the key.
Like, yeah. Cause you're like, okay, I understand where you're at. Cause sometimes we don't know. And we're just kind of like, and it's like, then they're like, you know,
like, what did I do?
So, and that's the same thing with like knowing yourself. Like when you're on court, it's like, okay, I'm at a 3. Like, how do I like start bringing myself up a little bit? Or I'm at red. Like, how do I stop and take a minute and like do what I need to do, channel the energy, calm down, whatever it is that works for you, talk myself up, whatever it is, and get back to that like yellow state. Yeah.
The, with the like, relationship by no means am I a pro, right? With 2 kids in the mix, it definitely amplifies that stuff.
Yeah.
We're also doing like a house renovation right now too. So that's tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. We'll misfire. And you know, if I'm like reading or something like that, I'm like in a philosophical mood and be like, hey, so I read this cool thing about this, and this, and she's like a 3, you know?
Yeah.
She's not into it.
Right.
Or vice versa. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not, you know, I'm at a red, you know, but we need to get better at that.
Well, hey, there you go. There you go.
For sure.
I mean, even me and my fiance, we have our moments where it's just like, oh, and then we regroup and we're like, okay, so not
going into this conversation. I should have asked, where are we at? Versus expecting something different.
Right. Also too, like, hey, like if you notice they're not engaged, then be like, where you at?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, whenever we're at. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
So this is a tough one. I can imagine. Someone's at a 3 and they're like, I need to get ready for this game or practice or whatever. Okay, let's boost up to a 10.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen like that.
No.
I would imagine getting from a low to a high is probably harder than getting from, well, I have my own perspective, from a red to a green. I quickly can do that with a release. But getting from a 3 to an 8 or a 9, how do you just boost energy like that?
Yeah, I think it's hard. And it depends on like what energy we're talking about and where they're at. Like if they're at a 3 calm and focused, cool. Like, and if that works for them, great. But if they're at like a 3 sluggish,
sluggish.
Then it's like, all right, what do we need to do? And a lot of times what I tell my athletes, if it's like that flat 3 sluggish, it's like, let's just, usually they have some sort of pre-match game routine that they go through that'll help them get to a state that they want to be in, where they have things in place. And if they're still not there when they get into the game, it's like, just focus on something small. Like focus on doing something super small in your control. So if it's like, you know, getting in there and like going after a rebound, or just really trying to play conservative on this hole and see how well you do with that, or
so it makes it a lot more chewable versus like, there's no way I can climb this mountain.
Yeah, no way. And
like, but right now all I want you to focus on is just like take the first 2 steps. That's it. All I want you to focus on is just doing rebounds, right? Or just do this, and it makes a lot more. That makes sense.
Yeah,
more chewable.
More chewable, and then you start to build that momentum because you're accomplishing it. You're working through it. You have something to focus on, and you're like, you start to get in a groove.
You're like, I am doing what I said I was going to do.
Yeah. And
now I can add on.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And you have a clearer mind to add. Sorry.
That's really cool. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Slumps.
Yeah.
Are a hard one.
Yeah.
Consistently not getting the outcomes you want over and over and over and over again. Yeah. Right. I'm sure you battle that a lot with some of your athletes, or your athletes battle that a lot.
Some do. Some, it's tough because it goes back to results, right? Like the slumps, it's like, well, I'm not hitting. And sometimes the mechanical stuff kind of gets funky and I think in those moments, it's more so, tapping into the love for the game, being forgiving of yourself, and just continue to grind, like appreciating the journey, making the most of what you're doing right now. Like we all go through slumps. We all have like,
it's interesting looking, even before this conversation, looking back at like in baseball, right? A hitting slump, or golf, like just not hitting well, striking the ball well, whatever, or basketball, just performance. Looking back, I'm like, man, getting out of slumps is so difficult because it's such a mental game. But like now I'm like, actually, it's pretty simple. Just doing this rubric, the same routines and the same practices.
Right.
That's all they can control anyway.
Right. And trying to look at the little things that are going well, that are going well, that you are doing well. And it could be as simple as, like, I think we take a lot of the simple things for granted. Like you showing up early, you can do that if you're in a slump. And I know it's kind of like, but guess what? It's a big deal. Because does everybody show up early? Probably not.
Right.
Kobe says it, be the first one there, last one to leave. Like doing little things like that just to boost yourself
and the
up.
Momentum, like you said before.
Yeah.
It's one more little chewable thing that you can 100% control.
Yeah.
And it will build momentum.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Last question.
Yeah.
I was going to ask this earlier. I just remembered it again. We talked about someone who's more of a firecracker, hothead, or just needs emotional releases, like a John Rahm, right?
Yeah.
And he has his strategies. What about the opposite, with an athlete that's more reserved and will shut down? Right. My wife, her name's Nicole. I think I told you that.
Yeah, I feel like
she was more like that on that end, like literally probably opposite of me.
Yeah.
And probably you, as in like more reserved, subdued, self-effacing, doesn't like to be center of attention, but also would shut down then when she was telling me stories, at least.
Yeah.
So someone like that, what strategies would you say for that?
Yeah. Definitely targeting like what's the shutdown from, like what's the focus of, like reasoning behind the shutdown, obviously, because there could be different reasons to shut down. And then really going from there, like focusing on a small goal. Like when you say shutting down, I think giving up. I don't know though if that's, like I said, you kind of have to figure out what the shutting down is rather than like firing,
Interesting.
Yeah. Like what does that shutting down look like? And then from there, like depending on what that is, okay, then how do we work through that? Like I had this one tennis player where it was just like they would shut down because they didn't want to feel like nervous or pressure, so they just shut down.
So they was afraid of the emotions that come with it.
Yeah, well, everybody's afraid of the emotions that come with it. Yeah.
Interesting.
To where they do things to stop feeling it.
Yeah. I don't want to feel afraid. I don't want to feel.
So I'm going to stop moving on court.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that way I don't feel the pressure. And then.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because they don't want to feel it. A lot of people do that, distracting
Makes total
themselves. And yeah, because we don't learn how to
cope with those emotions.
Yeah. We just distract and avoid constantly.
Interesting.
And try to be more positive. Yeah. That's a whole other thing. But anyway, yeah. So then it's figuring out, what was I saying before that? I got off track. That topic gets me every time.
That's so interesting.
It is interesting. So hold on.
I can tell it triggered you. Let's talk about that.
Next podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Round 3, we'll get into that.
Round 3.
So you're saying you had a tennis athlete that would shut down and then not move.
And not move. Yeah. And it was the fear of. And so it was really like, okay, well, you're going to feel those emotions anyway. Let's figure out, like, it's part of life. So like, let's figure out how to be more willing to feel those things and know that you can have tools to manage them. It's not bad to feel those things, and it's not as scary as it's uncomfortable, but we can work through that, excuse me. And then from there, keep moving your feet, focus on moving your feet.
Because I think once you tackle that, like that, if that's the root of a lot of it, and that, I would assume comes from outside, something besides tennis. Yeah. Which is very interesting,
the emotion stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be as simple as like your parents just don't talk about emotions. Yeah. Like it could be something as simple as that.
Yeah.
They're not, and that's There's a lot of different things. And again, everything, just like the solution, problem fixed, always giving solutions, like that's the constant message to all of us. Negative emotions are bad. Don't feel them. Be positive all the time. And it's like, okay, well, by teaching everybody that, we're constantly avoiding and fearing and having anxiety about getting anxiety. And it's like, you're just doing more harm than good.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to get you in for round 3 on coping, emotional management and coping strategies, and not being afraid of negative emotions.
Yeah.
This is uncomfortable, but you're not going to die,
Right.
And only be stronger as an individual if you could be more resilient with that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or willing to feel it.
Right. Exactly.
It's information.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
We'll have to round 3 for sure. Well, thanks for coming in again.
Yeah. Thanks for
I know you're super busy.
I always appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. If people want to work with you or have questions, what's the best way they can reach out?
So my Instagram is at Coach Nicole _E, and email is Nicole Erick, 2 E's in the middle with a K at the end, @gmail.com.
Okay, so, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Either one.
Cool. Yeah. And I've sent recommended you to a couple of our patients, which was like young athletes that are. This is the key, right? In my opinion, for longevity and performance.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
If y'all have any questions, you can always reach out to us for any suggestions, comments, or conflicting opinions. Like, we're always open to that stuff. If you're already battling a pain from a sports physical therapy standpoint, you can always reach out to us too. We'd love to help you. And the best way to reach us is our phone number at 561-899-8725, or our email for our administrator, which is team@athleterc.com. And we'll catch y'all next time.